Thank you. Let's see. So we're going to move down to item F on my agenda. This is the assets and liabilities draft results, kind of the final state, I would say, right, Bill? So it's been my privilege being the representative from SDIC to work with Bill on this process for, God, what, 4 years, Bill?
Quite that long.
No, it's been
it feels like 4 years. It feels like 4 years.
So, Bill, are you ready to tee that up?
I am. Yep. Thanks, Tom. Let me share my screen with you. I know you all had an opportunity to thoroughly examine the 120-page document that was part of your meeting packet this time around, and that's tongue-in-cheek. It's a very long report. I'm sure it's difficult to get through in a short period of time. What I want, the purpose here today is to make sure that the entire SDIC board is aware of the project's final report, at least in draft version, why that report is important, and giving you an opportunity to ask some preliminary questions I hope we can answer, and give you and inform you that you have a little more time to forward any review comments to me. And in fact, it'd be probably best to forward it to Emily. You're welcome to CC me, but send those to me by close of business on June 17th. So that's a week from Thursday. So that would be great if you're able to do that. So I'll take a few minutes here to go through the presentation. Can you all see? Yep, great. So there's only a handful of slides here, and we'll have a chance to spend most of the time that's allocated here for some of the questions you might have. Just as a reminder that the assets and liabilities projects stems from an ORS requirements that your district identifies its duties, assets, and liabilities as part of the dissolution process. So the new urban district understands what your district holds and what its responsibilities are. So this report is supposed to give a snapshot in time of all of that information. And so the intent here is for y'all to feel comfortable with the contents here, knowing that there will be an opportunity to make an adjustments moving forward before the new urban district is formally stood up with a permanent board and begins operation. But the primary contents here probably won't change dramatically. So hopefully you'll feel comfortable with the contents. As you know, and as Tom alluded to, there was a board working group that Tom was involved with over the last 7 months or so. I think we began in November, and we've been talking about this for some time prior to that. Jamie Damon is on the line here today. She helped with facilitating those conversations and with me to pull together information and to sort of strategize as the project went along. FCS group was brought in to provide financial expertise as part of the conversations, and Brown Caldwell was included to support some of the engineering and asset management related work. Oops, sorry. Quick snapshot of the schedule. We're at the end. We've gone through several stages here through the background definitions of assets and liabilities that your board discussed in January and agreed to, on us to move forward, talk about valuation methods a little bit. And now we're at the end, talking to individual boards, as well as a working group meeting, board working group meeting next week, with the intent, I hope, of having enough of the questions answered so you all and the other board members feel comfortable considering approving this report at your June 29th June 29th format meeting. So what does the report include? Well, there's an executive overview. That's just 2 pages. Hopefully you had a chance to skim through that. But as you go deeper in here, there's several other topics, including a purpose and background statements. Hong was able to pull together a section regarding duties of the drainage districts. So there's a section in the main report as well as appendices. The definitions and methodologies should look relatively familiar to you, with the exception of some of the asset management pieces when we're looking at future capital investments that staff felt the new urban district should be aware of moving forward. So I'm noting that because that's a distinction between what your current assets and liabilities represents and what future capital improvements are likely. Nick Hogan, our new CFO, was able to pull together a summary of the assets and liabilities based on the existing, the 2019-20 audit reports that we had just finished, and so those numbers match up with those reports. And the final topic deals with other considerations. So those are intangible assets as well as future capital improvements we feel are likely on the radar. The duties section focuses on legal commitments or legal expectations for the board to act. They're determined by their exercise of discretionary statutory authority and powers to accomplish those purposes. And Hong walks through 4 different components of those duties, starting with the reclamation plans, other plans and reports that the chief engineer accepts, along with contracts to the federal government. These are, at least for us nowadays, it may feel they're a little older contracts, but they're still valid. These are agreements we made with the Corps of Engineers for levee improvements over the decades. Finally, there's a series of board resolutions that she touched on. Definitions and methodologies. Recall that what an asset represents. It's a resource with economic value with those conditions. It's pretty narrowly focused, primarily for purposes of financial assets. So more intangible assets are such as environmental or social assets are not listed in here, but those are assets that are linked directly with our audit reports. We also identify what liabilities exist and note that the asset valuation method is the financial specialists call original cost less depreciation. But to me, it's a fairly straightforward process where you take the original cost and just depreciate it over time, year after year. And as long as you have the original costs, then you just have to make some assumptions about what depreciation means over time. And in our case, we use the same assumptions, as what's in the auditor's report. I'm repeating that phrase multiple times just to give you a sense that the information found in this report is extremely closely linked with those auditors' report. And so not only you, but others who are ratepayers or other folks who are part of the district can feel some assurance that we didn't try to go through a different method to value these assets. The final category here is are other methodologies to determine what cost estimates are associated with future capital investments. And those methodologies vary, unfortunately, depending on the source of that information, whether it's from the Corps, whether it's from consultants or staff. So here's a glimpse of what assets and liabilities that you and the other three districts currently possess as of June 30, 2020. Again, these could be updated as we move along, and the new urban board feels is appropriate. But you can tell that your net position is near $3 million based on what your total assets and liabilities currently represent. And that compares to others that it's a little, the net position is a little higher than in Penn 1, but lower than MCD and Penn 2. How the new urban district uses this information is still TBD. But the purpose of this report is to provide you sort of a baseline, you and others, sort of a baseline of what information, sort of factual information exists. How it's interpreted and applied is what Tanny and others on the new urban district's initial board will be doing. The final section deals with other considerations. I mentioned the intangible assets. There's one water right. There's a series of easements, hundreds of easements throughout the 4 districts. We do note about the Portland Metro levee system projects in this section. The total project budget is over $115 million. As you've heard, there's a local or non-federal match for those projects to move forward. And current estimates suggest that the design phase, or PED, is about $5.5 million collectively over the 4 districts. And the construction phase for those projects are just over $44 million, again, over all 4 districts. Your board and the other boards have not had a conversation yet how those costs are distributed among the 4 districts, we'll circle back to that when we talk about the CIP, because there's some assumptions in there, and we'll have to make sure that you're clear about that. The FEMA levee certification projects still exist. We still want to get make sure that the levee system is accredited by FEMA, and so we can keep the insurance rates lower. The cost for those projects that are not part of the PMLS set range from 10.5 to nearly 24 million. And that all depends on what the scope of those projects entail. There's the foundational material scope related to just the levee improvements, but you've heard from the LRC folks that the group, the partnership, the LRC partnership, is examining projects that include multiple benefits, not just sort of the core levee engineering aspects of that. So depending on what features of those multi-benefit conversations are included in the final scope, the costs could fall somewhere in that range. So beyond those, staff took a look at what a 20-year outlook would look like for the new urban district once it begins. So these are outlooks from, we divided into 10-year segments, starting in FY 25-26 for the next 10 years, and then the years 11 through 20. I split this up into 2 categories. One, major capital improvements represent any project or any assets or a series of assets that would contribute as one project that would be over $1 million. So those projects that are over $1 million for the first 10 years or second 10 years collectively sum to 24 million or $31 million. So that's one feature of it. The other feature is sort of ongoing capital improvements that are less than $1 million each, but they can be pretty substantial. As you know, your replacement of the pump at Sandy Pump Station is a great example of that. It's a substantial investment, but it was not something that required multiple $1 million. So those type of investments over time are just over 13 million or over 12 million, depending on you're in the first or the second year. And finally, I also wanted to make sure I highlighted to the new urban district board that your drainage system and other systems, the levee systems, are function because there's a partnership of owners to make sure that they operate properly. So it's not just those features that are owned by the district, but there are many other features in the system that need to continue to function, whether it's on land that others own or stormwater assets like pipes or ditches. And so there are a series of known capital improvements that others own that we want to make sure the new urban district recognizes, because they'll at least be involved in some conversations and potentially cost negotiation about how to improve those assets. Here's a glimpse of how the 20-year operating capital requirements look over time. This graphic will change, but it gives you a glimpse of the types of variability that would occur over time. We're tracking over 1,700 assets for all 4 districts, and we understand when they were installed, how much they cost to replace or rehab, and these are the type of investments over time that we're anticipating for this period of time. So what are the next steps? We wanted to share this information with you, get some feedback. We'd like the new urban, the working group will be meeting next week, discuss not only your input, but those from other individual boards. And finally, we'll present a final copy for your consideration during your June 29th format. And whether you approve it then or in a subsequent meeting, the final version will be distributed over to the new urban district. So that's my recap of the slides I had. Tom, I know you've been pretty involved with the working group. Is there anything else you'd like to add based on your observations there?
Thanks for the presentation, Bill. Very comprehensive. Yeah, I think the end result will hopefully be of value to the urban. I think that's still the outstanding question. Is this report is intended to hopefully benefit some decision making by this new body. You know, we have Eric on the board. Mary Helen is, I think she is also on the board. So they kind of carry some of the urban's interest, but there are more members on that board. And I don't know if they represent all the voices. So my hope is the final document truly provides some value and some disclosures that will help them guide their decision making. I know as I've been exposed to the data sharing, you know, SDIC, you know, the data shows we're not a huge capital consuming organization on the 20-year plan. So will that influence any of their decision making? You know, it will become a one district entity, and each entity is going to bring some certain level of assets, contributions to the new urban, as well as some liabilities. So my hope is this final report provides value in their ultimate goal of, you know, dissolution and how they package that final dissolution up. And I guess we can open it up to Tanny. Tanny, if you have any questions from what you've seen?
No, just a couple. As I get into the purpose, and particularly like statutory purpose and things, right? talks a lot about the legality of things. And I mean, I guess it comes back to discretionary immunity. Are there cases where volunteers have been like, are we in Sing Sing or someplace? Or Mexican jail or somewhere if we do something wrong? I guess my big question is dealing with the city. We don't have anything that looks like this.
So I say I'll take that question, and if Brian would like to, unless Brian wants to address that. So Tanny, if you're serving on the board, your bylaws allows for protection of individual board members to the extent you're making decisions within your role and duties as a board member. You also have a SDIC or SDAO's policies, insurance policies that cover you. The only, liabilities that could be traced to you at a personal level if you're acting beyond the legal bounds, or you're knowingly and recklessly taking decisions that would put the district at harm or raise claims against the district. And so the statutory duties were laid out with the intent to really define this report and what the urban district is to absorb. There's nothing in there that is intended to delineate whether the board members are personally liable or not. It's not part of the equation. And it's my job and Brian's job to make sure that you stay within the bounds of your board members' roles, so that you don't expose yourself to personal liabilities. Anything else to add to that, Brian?
No, I would typically agree with the majority of what you said, if not all of it. I think that if you act within the scope of your responsibilities, you're going to be okay. You do have the discretion to agree with things and as well as disagree with things. There's quite a few different variables that you have as a board member to take into consideration. And as long as you're acting as a board member and not trying to personally profit from decisions or bring harm to the district within your fiduciary responsibilities as a board member with the district, I don't see any issues at this point with this report or your discretionary suggestions to change it, accept it, or even reject it.
Okay, so it doesn't seem a little legalistic, possibly, maybe, to you guys? I guess not.
There's quite a bit of discretion that you have within this. And if there are specific questions that you have related to your decisions with that, you're free to come in and have executive session with me, and we can discuss that, and I can answer those questions for you.
Okay.
I'll add, Tanny, that the legalistic aspect of at least the duties section is to clearly define for you your legal, the legal lanes within which you as a board member should try to stay within. If you want to go beyond those legal lanes for whatever reason, whatever a policy or business decision, we can certainly help you with that by amending your bylaws or amending the statute, but or try to stay within that solely. Certainly all within your discretion, but the purpose of this was to clearly delineate those legal lanes for which these districts are to stay within in the next 5-6 years. And then the rest will be transferred up to the drainage districts, to the urban district, to the extent there are non-expiring legal obligations through either contracts we take on or any engineering reports or CIPs we take on.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions, Tammy?
No, not now.
So, Bill, you mentioned this will go to the urban after it goes to format. Is that the idea?
Correct. So the intent here is for your district, other districts feel comfortable with the contents here. Once we've finalized it and you've approved it, then I will we'll give it over to, or give the new urban district a copy of it. I'm not sure if that means we're giving a copy to the chair or we're giving a copy to the revenue development committee of that district, but we can talk to the to Mike Jordan, the chair, about how to transfer this information over.
So I guess, again, to clarify, Bill opened the presentation that the purpose, the reason for the asset and liability disclosure is really just to respond to the statutory language around disclosure. So how it's used, that's, you know, that's the to be determined. So we're providing a document that is hopefully consumed and decisions will be made that benefits all the district residents. So be it the SDIC residents or the ultimate new district formation boundaries. So. And again, I want to thank Jamie and her staff for her leadership and contributions to this document, as well as Bill's. This is much appreciated. They both kept us, the working group, on task. And Nick, you quickly got into the mix with providing some added value. So thank you for quickly jumping in.
My part was a sincere pleasure. Thank you.
And Tom, thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, they really made it a pleasant experience. I mean, as fun as going through audit reports, year-end audits, you know, it doesn't get much more enjoyable. But all in all, it was a good experience, good working group in general. So,
Good.
Emily.
Yeah, sorry. Just before we move on, I just want to ensure you that this document probably will change a little, just tweaks with language here and there. The section about the 20-year capital forecast likely will change a little bit. The numbers will change a little bit as we continue to refine it. So the final version may look a little bit different, particularly in that section. So, but I appreciate your time.
Bill, I will ask, on the debt disclosure table, it shows, this is based on, I think, FY20 actuals, and we were still showing, you know, the entire debt obligation to this Multnomah County. That is actually scheduled to be paid off in the 22 budget. So I will write a response and just suggest that if we can add a footnote indicating the planned 22 budget will have that debt removed in the FY22, because there's a kind of a schedule based on the IGA we have with the city that laid out interest only and then the final payments. So which becomes kind of mute when it's already paid off.
Yes, sir. As you said, Tom, I did base that exactly on the June 30th, 2020, as you said, but I think it makes sense. We could sure add a note to it explaining what the current intent is.
Yeah, agreed.
And there may be one or two other adjustments from other districts similar to that. So.
Yeah, we're all moving along. We're trying to address our debt capacity and debt obligations. So SDIC is probably not alone in this effort.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Bill. Emily, I'm not, is Ken on board yet? I don't see him popping up.
No, I haven't seen him yet.
Should we go on to, let's see. I want to hold on the budget discussion. CIP update, that's probably waiting for Ken as well.
That would be probably best. Let me text him and see if he has an ETA. And then Nick, I assume there's no contract updates for this month.
That is correct.
And I was holding on public testimony until we were in quorum.
Mhm.
You know, Tom, the CIP updates are kind of twofold. One is the CIP package that that was included in your larger meeting package, but there's also individual project updates from this current year. So we certainly can wait for Ken to come, or if you want to talk about that non-budgetary element, I'm happy to walk through those.
Yeah, I think having Ken present for anything to deal with the long-range needs or the capital plan, he should be present. I'm just kind of stalling here, see if Ken's able to respond. We could take a recess and just kind of hold out for 10 minutes. I'm sure we can all check emails rather than guessing what the other's thinking here.
Mr. Chair, if you want, I can give you I can burn a couple of minutes with an update on my first 5.5 days on the job, and I'm talking to Ken separately, so I don't think he would mind, but I'm also happy to wait, take a 10-minute recess.
No, Jim, I appreciate that. And my apologies, I was waiting for the full board and to be in quorum. But welcome, Jim, Jim Madow. I'm hoping, I know you and Tanny are having a discussion or have had a discussion. I met Jim just yesterday on a phone call. It was a pleasure getting to know him a little bit more. He has crossed some paths with some coworkers of mine who spoke his praise, and so I'm yes, yeah, funny guy.
Small town.
Yep. So I know the districts, the boards that he is tackling will definitely appreciate his leadership. I know SDIC is happy to have a full-time executive director back in the realm. So welcome. So Jim, why don't you go ahead and share any new business that you might have to share?
Well, it's not necessarily new business, but just sort of what I'm focused on initially. And thank you for that nice introduction and for the time you've provided to me so far, and to you too, Tanny. I appreciate it. Really, my top priority is making sure we continue to take care of the existing system and make the most of it. And so for me, what that means is really meeting the operations team and understanding what they do every day, and really trying to understand that, make sure we have their back and we're supporting them. Bill is going to take me out on a tour starting this week. We're going to break it up because it's a relatively large system that we need to look at. So that's really the first thing. Let's make sure we keep the current system working and keep people safe as we work through some of these other more policy-driven items. The second thing, in any new job, I have to learn all of the administrative processes and how to file paperwork and do timesheets. And I've had just great help from everybody on the team. Certainly have more to learn. Smart Sheets and OneNote and all these other things that are similar, but maybe a little bit different. And on the admin processes side, what I've been attempting to do, I've had one-on-one meetings with all my direct reports, and now starting to attend some staff level conversations to get to know people and understand what they're feeling and how things are going. We do have some opportunities to, I think, tighten up some of our internal procedures and policies, maybe around classifications and record keeping. And so I know Hong and Nick and others have a full plate on that. So I'm getting up to speed on all those things that we want to get done to ensure we can maintain and really build on public trust and the trust of the boards, and make sure we're transparent and accountable both to you all and to the public, particularly as I believe that scrutiny is going to increase on our organization as we move down the road here, and that's appropriate. We're asking for more authority, more money, and so we really have to earn that. And so really trying to focus on the public trust and the board trust and how we can build on the great system that we have and maintain that. And then the third step is getting to know the board. And obviously Mike Jordan and Ken were priorities for me. But because SDIC and Penn 1 have meetings this week, I tried to call you all and get some one-on-one meetings set up. So that's in the works, and I'm working through all the board members and hope to have a face-to-face or phone call or Zoom or Teams or however you want to think about it, conversation with everybody, ideally before the end of the month. I did get one pass from one Penn 1 board member who I know professionally, and he said, let's wait till July. I said, okay. The fourth thing, and it really ties to my top priority, which is the existing system, is using some of my experience and background and contacts to address some of the homelessness issues that are making it challenging for us to access and maintain our facilities. So I'm working closely with Bill and Evan and some others to see if we can't break loose some change and some action to make sure that our staff can safely access our facilities, that we can hopefully stabilize some of those areas for the long term and not have a recurring problem there. But the issue of homelessness and access has created a lot of challenges for our team and some stress among our team members. And so it's a top priority, and I'm glad that I worked a lot on these issues when I was in the mayor's office. And so I'm getting some good help from my former colleagues at the county and at the city of Portland. And then the last piece, and this is really coming from Mike Jordan, and I think it's appropriate, is working with Mark Landauer, lobbyist through SDIO, and Evan to make sure that we are as successful as we can be in obtaining additional revenues from the state legislative session that's underway, primarily, of course, for the new districts. So we're in touch with Mark and Mike and others and trying to make sure that we're as successful as we can be in this short session. So that's really the short update that I can provide. And it doesn't look like I burned enough time to get Ken on board, but I can also keep talking. I'm pretty good at it. I'm known for being able to keep a meeting going if necessary. So that's what I have to say. I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any feedback.
Much appreciated, Jim. Danny, any questions for Jim?
No, none. I just look forward to working with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my call and for setting up some time with me. I'm looking forward to it.
You bet.
We're fortunate to have you guys helping us out. Well, darn. I thought I could get it done, but no.
So Emily, today's budget, this is just kind of a follow-up, another budget work session. We're not taking any action today.
No. You would expect, the next time you would see it would be at the format meeting when you would be expected to take some action. So typically this is the last time that you give any substantive feedback if you want changes. There's not really time at the format to make any changes. We're at the kind of 11th hour at that point. So it is important if you want to make any changes or have feedback to do that at this meeting. So it would be a preference to have it in quorum. But I guess, Casey could walk through some of the details and then we can see, like, hold off on deliberation until later. And I could reschedule something if we need to. I haven't heard back from Ken, so I'm not sure. I'm sure he's tied up.
But there is no, to clarify, there's no action required. So it's an information item only. So we could proceed, sir.
Yes, definitely. It's just, if you are going to deliberate and like give Casey feedback, we'd probably want that to be, in a public, like a full session, but there isn't any decision making.
Yeah, I'm okay with Casey just kind of running through any the substantive changes from the initial meeting. I saw the changes were made that we had discussed in quorum from our last discussion. And maybe at the end we can just kind of review next steps regarding the budget and the timing on that. So, Casey, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. We sent out the materials, the updated budget spreadsheet, and a 2-page Word summary that's got lots of words and numbers in it. There are really only 2 things of substance that changed from the last time. One is that the beginning balance is up some $49,000 from 3 things. One is correcting or adjusting the beginning balance for 2021 to agree with the audit. the latest projection on revenue is another $15,000 this year from assessments. And the third is that spending is down, what, $21,826 in the latest estimate that generally happens from the first time to the second time. Get closer to the end of the year, people know they can't do everything they'd hoped they could do. So with all that, it comes out to increase the beginning balance by $49,000. The other thing is that this budget incorporates paying off that loan to the county for the Troutdale Weir of $125,000. There's nothing else substantial that changed. A couple of little things, but not worth worrying about. And the issue really for the longer term is that given the latest numbers we have, even though they increased between last time and this time on what PED is going to cost, just for PED, the latest version, the Sandy Drainage Improvement Company could continue to go along and pay all your PED costs of $700 and some odd thousand without increasing assessments over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, however long you last. I think it's fair to say that the numbers are not final. The allocation method for how the numbers are split out, the local match is split out, is certainly not final. That is going to take some work, both of those things, and finding money for the construction. Those things are going to take work next year for you and the other board members from the other 3 boards to hash out how you think the allocation needs to work on these costs, and start going out and seeing if you can scrape up money, because while Sandy can cover your PED costs, some of the other districts can't, and they're going to need some help with it.
Casey, real quick question, and maybe staff can help with this one. The discussion around the allocation, the cost sharing with PED, that's kind of been out there for some time. And you know, we're not pressing for a number, but it seems like getting a number soon would be advisable, because whatever we create with the, I don't know if we're going to get through all the PED cost prior to dissolution, or if it overlaps into dissolution, because it's really, in the short term, how do we fund PED? And
yeah,
I guess I'm looking for, you know, it seems like we should have some time certain on coming up with a decision, because we talked about having a number for this budget based on a model. And right now, what I'm hearing is we kind of just have a plug.
Well, there is a model, but whether the model is, I haven't been privy to very many of these discussions at all, so I may be talking out of my hat, but the model is something that the LRC staff has come up with, and they've analyzed it and run through a number of different alternatives. That's supposed to be as much as it can, from what I understand, based on benefit to each district, and that what they pay is commensurate with the benefit they're going to receive. I think it's probably important for the boards to review that and see if it makes sense, and have suggestions about whether there's a different way to cut up the pie. And that needs to happen in the coming year. None of these PED costs are scheduled to start being incurred until year after next, until 22-23. So there is time to work on it.
Okay, thank you. Danny, you have any questions for Casey?
No, Casey, I think your description and narrative were very thorough. Thank you. But I agree. I think we need to look at the PED costs. You know, I was able to pick myself up after I looked at the CIP and saw what happened to that. But I do think it's something that, you know, sooner than later we need to get ironed out.
Casey, thanks for, you had anything else to share this morning?
Not I.
So,
so next is the format meeting on the 29th of June, when all the budgets the 5 budgets get approved. The urban district has had its budget approved and has gotten its certification from the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission. So they're scheduled to vote on adopting the budget at their meeting in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from yesterday. But other than that, I don't anticipate any big changes between now and then. If there are minor tweaks, I'll let you know about it. Probably not anything material. And you should be ready to vote on it and approve it at the meeting on the 29th. I will reach out to Ken and just give him the same 2-minute blurb I've given you and see if he has any questions.
Much appreciated, Casey.
Yeah.
Emily, do we
Mr. Chair,
have
just for your information, I did chat with Ken on Friday and asked if he had any concerns or questions. And at that time, anyway, he didn't, but he might benefit from the conversation. Tanny, you brought, Tom, anything you had, but just coming in, he didn't seem to have too many concerns. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's perfectly fine. Emily, I was just going to say, what's our thoughts for the landowner meeting?
So those invitations should be going out at the end of the week, and then we'll be doing the same thing we did in November as far as just a fully digital landowner meeting. We're kind of just running through the same usual steps, and now we've done 5 of them virtually so far, and so I think we have a pretty good system. Karen had been kind of facilitating that whole thing, and so she's missed greatly, especially because she had a lot of that technical stuff down as far as the voting and like the links on our website. But I think we've got it all filled in, and I'll just be taking the lead on facilitating. I will know more about the quorum and like what we're likely to see as far as attendance, probably not for another week and a half or so. Like the last 3 or 4 days leading up to the meeting, we should have a good idea as far as who's attending. And we did not have quorum when we did in the fall digitally, but I don't know, it's a whole different time of year, so you never know, that can make a big difference.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, I know Tanny and Ken are pounding the pavement looking for additional SDIC board members. It's a little harder sell when you're promising dissolution in 3 or 4 years. So, but
limited duration. It's maybe
that's
something.
right. And the opportunities to say you're going to be able to work with Casey is that timeline is shortening quickly. But there's some bright, hopeful new members coming on board. So I think we'll get there.
I don't know, when I got recruited to be on a board of a local agency, if I'd known it was going to go away in 3 or 4 years, I would have made my decision to join it a lot easier.
It is a shorter sentence.
In the meantime, if you do hear of anyone who's interested or have ideas of potential board members, I would be glad to sit down with anyone and sort of talk through the roles and responsibilities and give them a better idea of what it takes to be on the board. So just let me know. I'm glad to be a resource for recruitment in that way if I can help.
And obviously, if there's anything I can do or anybody else on the team, give us a shout, and we'll do our best to have your back.
Thank you all. Again, MCDD staff, thanks for supporting SDIC. Brian, thank you for your support. Tanny, do you have anything in closing?
Well, I do think we should have a comprehensive discussion about the allocation of projects to the other districts. I think that's going to be necessary. And then the other thing I want to look at is, I know it's an ongoing regional issue, but when it comes to homeless, our current policies aren't working very well. And I think it's hurting staff, especially the ops team that's out there. And it's also not doing us any favors in the eyes of the landowners and the community. And I think, if we're going to go forward and ask for money and other things, it's going to be a tougher sell when you've got this ongoing problem that really isn't getting addressed.
That's a great point, Tanny. Jim, maybe this is something that can come back to, I know this is not just SDIC. This might be a broader format discussion when you're ready to tee it up. There was an active program established many years ago to address this, but it's just really snowballed in light of the pandemic, as we can all understand. It's a terrible circumstance that people are faced living in the conditions they are, but here we are, still needing to get the work done.
Yeah, duly noted, and we'll definitely have regular updates for you on our progress or potentially lack thereof. But we're fortunate that the region's voters have invested pretty heavily in services, and I think some new policies coming out of the city of Portland should, I want to be cautious here, not to overpromise, but I'm seeing a little bit more will to take action around critical infrastructure and increase the pace of cleanup activities, given that the CDC guidelines are changing. So I think our work is to really stay connected to that and to really make a strong case that our system really requires additional actions, and really formalizing that partnership with the city and some of the other partners. So it's a top focus, and everybody on the team has made that clear to me. So we'll try and stay on it and keep you updated. And if you have particular issues or see something that's troublesome, I hope you'll let me know.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, the impacts that the homeless faces when they start to undermine our embankments, and we had that occur in the past. So it's just not having them create a dig out on our structure is greatly to avoid that. So I'm going to end this discussion today. We did not achieve quorum, so we are not adjourning as a quorum, but I want to thank everybody for their time this morning, and staff again, much appreciated.
So as far as Tanny's follow-up items, did you all need to discuss those prior to the format meeting, or are you comfortable just reconvening at the format meeting?
Tanny?
I guess I prefer to do it before the format meeting. That could get a little dicey, but that's up to you guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't want, if you want to talk, like, I just wasn't sure if that was like something we should discuss in general, or if it's like a problem you want to try to just like hash out a little more before you're comfortable adopting the budget. If you want to just generally get that on like for future discussion, or if you want that discussion to happen prior to budget adoption, I don't think there'll be opportunity, or I wouldn't feel comfortable having that unanswered the day before the end of the fiscal year and wanting to like try to solve those problems. So if you'd like to get another meeting on the calendar, then we can.
That'd be
But to
my
be
preference.
clear, if I could, Tanny, also, I believe your concerns relate to the long-term distribution of costs and how we're going to do that. And I would ask Casey to weigh in, but the budget we're adopting, or you're going to adopt, next year's budget, I don't believe directly affects your question. Casey?
Not directly, but as far as approving the CIP, that would definitely come into play. And I also think there's a couple things, I'd like to maybe get some traction on, which is, the gate tower. Can we shut that thing down? Is that a possibility?
I'm only trying to clarify, sir, the difference. I guess in my mind, there's the budget adoption, and then there's
Right.
certainly other issues we have. And I guess I would turn to Bill. I'm not sure how the two relate. How does the CIP adoption necessarily relate to the budget approval? Because
So as Tammy alluded to in past, this board and other boards approved the 5-year CIP packets just prior to the budgets, the 1-year budget. So both documents are approved separately, but at the same.
And when we approve that CIP, we start planning on those projects. And so if there's, something that we want to look at doing something differently, it would hopefully be done before we approved it.
Danny, I'm just going to stop you there. Ken
Yeah.
Anderton has arrived. I just want to recognize him on roll call.
Thank you, Tom, and so, apologies for being late.
So for the record, SDIC board is in quorum at this time. Sorry about that. Welcome, Ken. We're just about wrapping up, so you timed it right.
Perfect timing. Thank you.
So Nick, Tanny, Emily, and Bill, we have a clear plan here to address Tanny's concerns around the 5-year plan and the timing of adoption.
I'm sorry, I'm a little, I need some more information to fill in some gaps here. So I know Tanny's interested in how the costs are distributed between the 4 districts over time, and that certainly affects the 5-year CIP. I know you're also interested in the gate tower. We can close it down. That's addressed in the LRC budgets. There's a small assessments that the engineering firm is doing next year to lay out another option besides either $1.5 or $2 million options you've seen already. So both of those topics, while important, will not be resolved before your June 29th formats meeting. So if there's some other information that we can help you provide that makes you feel a little more comfortable with the 5-year CIP or the annual budget, we're happy to track that down in the interim. And in some cases, I suppose you can part of the response could be, I'm just not comfortable with the placeholder numbers that are shown in this 5-year CIP as an example, and maybe if we remove those, but that's just one scenario. So yeah, I'm hoping for a little more information to help us do some
Yeah,
research.
so I guess I would say, like on the long-term district benefits, the 4 or 5, almost 6 million gratuity that we're talking about there. How did we come up to that number? How did we get that? What's behind that number? What exactly is it, that we're paying for? I'd like to have a little better understanding of what that is. And then the gate tower, can we decommission it for that amount of money? What does that look like? And maybe a conversation with MCDD about splitting the cost of that, and then they would worry about water at that point.
So I just want to make sure everybody's tracking. Tanny's referring to the 5-year CIP document, and he's looking at the PMLS projects combined in 22 through 31.
Right.
That's the $6 million that is on SDIC's capital improvement plan. So that's the sensitive number that, are we ready to advertise? We are on the hook for that amount when there's uncertainty.
Well, and the other thing, Tom, would be like, if there's a 5 and whatever million debit on our side, is there a credit on somebody else's? I guess that would be my concern. Is on somebody else's CIP, is there a credit of 5 million and change?
Yeah, so I think in a different meeting, we can have somebody from the LRC staff available to describe what the basis is of those numbers and how they relate to the other districts and what they're paying for that local match. Remember, it's a total of 5.5 million. This version has you paying 700,000, and the construction is over 44 million. And in this version, you're paying over 5 million. So if we have an LRC staff member available to you to describe, to explain what these numbers represent and how they impact other districts, I hope that would be of value to you.
Yeah, and that would be really helpful, because if somebody asks you, what are you going to tell them? You know?
So Nick, Bill, is it feasible to strike the PMLS projects off the 5-year CIP, given there's no agreement on cost share?
It's
Well,
certainly, right now, it's our best guess. I'll let Bill go after I go. Right now, it's certainly, I'm told it's really almost a placeholder, because it's our preliminary estimate from the Corps. It's very preliminary. So at one time, we actually discussed whether it made more sense just to leave it out until we knew more. So I'll let Bill weigh in, but I'd say, yeah, it's a judgment call. You know, when do we know enough to put an actual number in? Because we meant it so far, it's just a kind of a placeholder. Bill?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in practice, it's pretty easy to delete 2 lines in the spreadsheet, but it's obviously the rest of it here. So, what do you want to inform the rest of your district and the landowners that are potentially could be impacted here? Leaving it off this year it would be fine. They just wouldn't know that, a potential wave of costs could be coming, even if we're just talking about PED. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you always add it next year, or, you potentially can just amend the CIP, I suppose, in the middle of the year. And once you have the conversation with the other districts and make an adjustment to this document.
I'll just add to that. My understanding for the proposal of the cost in the CIP summary is based on very numerous cost allocation methods that had been briefed to the 4 districts at a format meeting some months ago. So this is not a method that is new. And I think staff in this case just chose the hybrid project cost and economic benefits allocation method that Colin had discussed. But certainly the point here was just that it's a placeholder, and there are several methods, and the other option is to put a range of what those costs are depending on the allocation method. But you're right, Tom and Tanny, there hasn't been an agreement on the allocation method yet, but certainly those methods have been briefed to all boards. And we applied that method in the CIP summary, the same method for all CIP summaries for all districts, for whatever, if that's helpful.
So this formula was presented to us at a past meeting in this.
My understanding that it was the last time we had talked about the cost allocation, he had presented on this. But we will have Colin. Unfortunately, Colin is a new dad again, and he is not here to advise on that.
Oh, I guess this decision won't be made today, but I guess I'm kind of leaning towards removing it until there is clarity, because this will be a public document, or it's going to be noted placeholder, not a real number until there's action taken to agree to it.
And I would add, sir, when I say it's a placeholder, and that's what I call it, but it's also the current best guess we were given by the Army Corps of Engineers. So my own professional recommendation would be it's the best we have. So I would recommend that you include something like that, but we add a note and make darn sure it's clear that this is our current best estimate. It would seem to me to be a little bit of a disservice to our public to remove it completely because of the uncertainty. That is the best current number we have right now, but we know it's going to change. So I would highlight it with a note somehow.
Yes. So I guess I'm a little remiss on understanding the formula that derives the $6 million, and I guess that's what Tanny and I need to hear. Ken, I'm sure as well. to fully understand so we can explain it to a landowner if they were to question. So Emily, I think it's back to your question. I guess to get this adopted, that would be an action, or it's struck, either way. Thank you, Tanny, for bringing that up.
So I appreciate that conversation regarding the PMLS. Is there something else about the gate tower specifically that you'd like to see that's different than what's been presented to you?
I mean, we're talking like 1.8 million or something to decommission it.
Yep.
But then I read in what came out, I believe it was in one of the last pages, it talked about maybe some mitigation being required if it was decommissioned for hydrology purposes.
Right. So that's primarily on the MCDD side. Blue Lake drains to the Sandy pump station. So that water's got to go somewhere if you plug up the pipes. And so what MCDD would have to do is find another route for that water to be conveyed so it can get back down to another pump station that can get to the Columbia River or Columbia Slough. So one option for them is to build a new pump station right next or very, very close to that gate tower and then pump the water over to Fairview Lake, which then we could route down to our existing infrastructure.
And
there
that
could be
would
other
address-
options, but that has to be addressed.
Sorry. And that would address what you're talking about for mitigation.
I believe so. I need to go back in and make sure I understand what full mitigation means in this case. You might recall a nuance to the SDIC drainage master plan. By plugging those pipes, you lose the ability to access flood storage on the Blue Lake side. But the difference that we were talking about in water level at the Sandy pump station is pretty small. And so you would have to at least acknowledge that flood storage is no longer available. And we'd have to make sure that we can operate the system in a manner that still meets the services that your landowners have experienced over the years. The replacement of the Sandy pump station will help quite a bit with that because currently the Sandy pump station is too low for very large storms. And so when if the PMLS projects go through as expected or as designed, the new pump station will be higher. And so you will address some of that issue there. So there's some mitigation on your side of the levee, but most of it is in MCDD.
We still have Lake Anderton over there, so.
We do, yeah.
It's a luscious new wetland mitigation site, Tanny.
It's a site
more
to
of a
see.
little pond.
So I want to make sure I know what our next steps are on CIP aspects. It sounds like no matter what we do on the budget, we need a briefing for you guys on that existing basis for the preliminary placeholder allocation. And you guys would love to have that conversation before you adopt your budget. But what I'm hearing from staff is that while the two are related, they're not directly implicating one another. But so we're going to try and get that conversation scheduled with you before your budget vote. Is that correct?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah,
And our options appear to be, well, if you understand it and you're comfortable with it, you can explain it, then we have another option, which would be to leave it in. The other would be to add some language that makes clear that this is a best guess, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third would be to remove for now. Okay, is that right?
Yep.
Am I tracking? Thanks.
Yep, thanks, Jim. Emily, since we're in quorum, any public comment today?
No, there's none.
Just verifying. Can you, Mr. Short's elaborate briefing on the budget updates? It was a wonderful 3-minute presentation highlighting the changes from our last discussion. Casey's going to reach out to you and kind of provide a one-on-one. So
Perfect. That's
nothing
what I was
surprising.
going to suggest. Thank you so much.
And then the budget is scheduled to come to the format on the 29th. So that's what we're working towards to adopt. Casey, you have some?
Nope. I'll just coordinate with Ken.
Super.
And I'll see about adding, probably be the easiest if I add some time to the landowner meeting, since we'll already be planning for a meeting, that maybe we can do this CIP discussion. So that's going to be, what day is it? 2 weeks from tomorrow. But I'll take a look at calendars and I'll be in touch as far as some additional meeting time.
Great. It'll be important that Ken's at that landowner meeting.
Yeah.
We still own a lot of land.
Yes, you do.
So can we take a moment to discuss how do we achieve quorum, or how do we get our numbers there? We can't do it just with the port, correct?
Correct.
So
Yeah, we really need BPA and the developers. So Trammell Crow or Clarion, I think, is the owner now of the Amazon facility. FedEx. Those are probably the largest, other than the port.
is there if we had to pick two, is there, I mean, we can strategize here and focus on those landowners that will get us, I mean, we can send out, they all have invites, but
Yeah.
what we've learned is they often don't show up, leaving us short on our numbers. So if we
There has been
target,
a dynamic in the past as far as some of those larger like corporations that like FedEx, you know, we recall like Bruce did a lot of legwork over there, but ultimately just because of the size of the corporation, they weren't comfortable like signing over any authority to act on behalf of FedEx to any individual from that site. And so I guess like, from my experience, anyone who has the more local their presence, the more likely they are to kind of understand and be able to like engage in a meaningful way, would be my experience in all the districts.
I think your biggest chance is probably FedEx, because they do have a plant manager, Shane Spanis, or I forget how to say his last name. Amazon's tricky because it's owned by a real estate investment, Clarion, like a REIT. So they just lease from them. So I don't know if that can pass through as a subleasee as a landowner. I think it has to be the landowner.
And if they could get the landowner to delegate it to them, then that would be fine. But
So I was going to say, couldn't they designate it to someone at Amazon?
yes,
They could, but then you're asking two large entities to coordinate. So Bonneville Power might be one I can try to see if we can get them to engage.
Okay.
And I'm friends with one of their senior lawyers. So if you want to coordinate, I can try and reach out to him and see if he has any suggestions. I don't think he works in real estate though, so not sure whether he'd be the right guy, but if there's anything I can do to help, let me know.
Great, thanks, Jim.
And I can reach out to Shane again.
much appreciated, everyone. I'm just trying to avoid a second landowner meeting at a reduced ratio of owners present. And with the port alone, we make the threshold on the second go around, I believe. So.
Ken, maybe the port just needs to buy more property out there.
Right.
Well, we should, a little short-sighted, we shouldn't have sold the property. We should have
There you
just
go.
leased it, right?
That's the problem. You sold it.
I know, I'm cussing my colleagues out. I developed it and they sold it, you know.
Any other comments from board?
No, so
Staff?
I'll follow up and confirm that time, and then I'll go ahead and I'll keep you all in the loop as far as landowner meeting and anything I've heard kind of from the field as far as who's going to be attending and you know, what's happening out there, what we can expect.
And your staff has already reached out to the LRC team, letting them know we're going to need their help to make sure you guys have a thorough understanding of the information. So we're on it.
I'm going to call the SDIC, adjourn the meeting today. Thank you all for your time. You get 40 minutes back today. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you. Have a good one.